Hi everyone, my name is Marcus and you're watching the Reef Nerd YouTube channel. Just recently I've hit 2 milestones. Not only is my tank now 2 years old, but the Reef Nerd YouTube channel has crossed over 2,000 subscribers. I want to take a bit of a tour through my entire tank, the setup, the journey so far, and we can see what 2 years of reefing can really look like. So to start off with, let's run through my entire setup and equipment. As you might know if you watch my channel, I am a bit of a gear junkie, and the equipment in my tank does change pretty regularly. So I'll show you exactly what I'm running right now. The tank itself is a Neptunian Cube K90. It's a fantastic tank. It's 3 foot wide with some extra height and depth from standard sizes. It comes with a fully resin stand that is immune to water, salt and swelling, and a full acrylic sump. The weir has dual intakes with an inlet at the top and at the bottom. This helps prevent detritus buildup and helps keep your sandbed clean. Although as you can see with my tank, over the last 2 years the sandbed has migrated. About this half of the tank has very little sand remaining and this half of the tank has all of the sand. And I think that's just due to the flow pattern of my gyres and the very fine sand that I chose when setting up my tank. There's not much I can do about that. I performed a DIY mod to my overflow with a hybrid Durso overflow, which allows it to run fully silent. I did a video on that recently, which I'll link above. My return pump is a MaxSpec Turbine Duo. It's never skipped a beat. I think that I've taken it out for a full cleaning and teardown twice in 2 years. The Turbine Duo has 2 outlets should you choose to configure it in that way. I personally just use the one, but the option is always nice to have should I need to expand my manifold or run some other piece of equipment off it in the future. Also from MaxSpec are 2 gyres that I run, one on the back and one on the side. Recently MaxSpec have expanded their gyre range with some new and improved models, and Red Sea's also come out with a line of gyres. It's obvious why these pumps are seeing continued development. They're awesome and definitely my favourite type of wave maker. I certainly have no regrets here and will likely always run gyre style wave makers. The wide sheet of flow they create across the tank, in my opinion, is vastly superior to the jet style flow pattern of normal wave makers. My primary filtration is provided by the Santa Monica Rain 2 Algae Turf Scrubber. It's an outstanding unit and has kept my display largely algae free for the life of the tank. As the tank has aged, nitrates and phosphates have occasionally crept up a little higher than I would like on occasion. However, small adjustments with additional supplements like GFO or lanthanum chloride or temporarily reduced feedings have always brought my levels back to where I want them. Overall, my approach to reefing has changed a little bit over time with regard to nutrients. I no longer chase really low nitrate within reason, as I feel I get better coral coloration when it sits in the 5 to 10 parts per million range. Phosphate I definitely still keep as low as I can, below 0.1, as there are more well understood negative effects to elevated phosphate. My secondary filtration is provided by a Quantum Nios 120, which is a perfectly fine skimmer, if maybe slightly undersized for this tank. That's not a problem because it is, as I said, secondary filtration for me, given I run the Rain 2, but it's easy to clean and quiet. I also run it with a Pacific Sun CO2 scrubber connected to the air intake, which helps buffer my pH and keep it a bit higher. Finally, on filtration, I also run a heap of Marine Pure cubes and Mantis Bio blocks throughout my sump. I plan to remove the Marine Pure cubes and add more bio blocks over time, as the cubes are now 2 years old and they're becoming very fragile and starting to crumble and make a bit of a mess in the sump. There's also a single filter sock I run purely for water polishing. Whilst the tank has 2 filter sock holders, the second is plumbed directly into the Rain 2 and is therefore not used. For auto top off of RODI and automatic water changes, I run the Auto Aqua Smart AWC. My review of that unit is a very popular video on my channel and still generates a lot of comments and messages to me, as many reefers gravitate towards automatic water changes. My position has not changed. The unit is awesome, has run without fault for nearly 2 years now, and I have not done a manual water change in that time. I stand by my statement that setting up automatic water changes is the single best thing you can do in the hobby to increase your chances of long-term success. Just do it. For heating, the tank has a single Aquamanta titanium heater. I see that as a single point of failure in my tank, and as we are now approaching winter here in Australia, my to-do list does contain an item to add some redundancy around the heating, either through smarter controls over the tank's temperature or a secondary heater. I always recommend the titanium style heaters. In my experience, they're much more reliable than the glass ones. For dosing, the tank is primarily fed by my Pacific Sun AC Nano calcium reactor, with the attached CalcFeeder Pro controller, which manages both the CO2 and the effluent dosing to the tank. It's a really great all-in-one solution, and it's very simple to use, particularly for those who might be otherwise a little bit overwhelmed by the perceived complexity of a calcium reactor. It's a relatively recent addition to my tank, added about 6 months ago, and I have weaned the tank off 2-part dosing entirely and reduced my Kalkwasser dosing significantly. As of today, the effluent dosing rate on the calcium reactor is set to 1.8 litres an hour, and I'll keep my Kalkwasser where it is now, which is at about 1.5 litres a day. My Kalkwasser is dosed via an Avast-Marine K1 calc stirrer, mostly to help buffer pH and offset the negative effects of the calcium reactor rather than to contribute alkalinity and calcium, although it does do some of that as well. Now, I also run a Core 7th and a KH Lab, which performs automated alkalinity testing on my tank. It's fully capable of handling your dosing via 2-part or 3-part mixtures according to your tank's alkalinity levels every time it tests, and that is how I had mine running before the calcium reactor. Now though, I continue to have it test my alkalinity. Currently it's testing 12 times a day, but the other 4 dosing heads not used for the alkalinity testing are currently being used to dose trace element mixtures. I have both Coral Essentials and Reef Anabolics trace ranges available to me, and I'm taking it very slow right now as I'm running ICP tests every few months. I want to see the effects of the calcium reactor on my trace element levels and then dial in the dosing for additional trace as needed after that. Interestingly, I've heard that in the future the Core 7 will be able to directly interface and control my Pacific Sun calcium reactor via their cloud service, so I'm really excited for that upgrade in the future. For lighting, I run 2 Kessel A360Xs, both with narrow beam reflectors, on which I did a 1-year review, which you should check out linked above. They're mounted in an Aquatic Life DX18 hybrid fixture, which is running 2 Blue Plus and 2 full actinic T5 bulbs. They run a shorter cycle than the Kessels and are mostly there to increase the spread and coverage, especially on my SPS colonies, which are very dense and prone to shadowing. In terms of livestock in my tank, it's pretty simple, but we have 2 designer clownfish. Unfortunately, they've yet to pair up, instead choosing each a corner of the tank to host in and generally ignoring each other. Maybe one day they'll decide to pair. Fingers crossed. I also have 2 mandarins that paired straight away. They always sleep next to each other, they do their sexy dance every evening, it's very cute. Both my mandarins are really fat and have been in my tank now for 18 months. I also have a yellow tang and a blue tang. Before people troll the comments section below with dead memes about tang police, don't fret, my big blue tang already has a new home in a friend's very large tank lined up and will be moving there shortly. It was always the plan, putting a blue tang in this tank, that once he outgrew it, he'd find a new home. I also have a coral-banded shrimp, a blood shrimp, and a sand-sifting starfish. There are heaps of snails of various varieties which all actively breed and maintain their numbers despite the coral-banded shrimp snacking on them every now and then. I have not had to add snails in over 18 months, so they seem to have found an equilibrium. I've been pretty lucky over the last year with no fishy deaths or diseases. My tank is completely ick-free because I use good quarantine practices, including rounds of tank transfer. In terms of coral, as you can see, the tank is getting pretty packed. SPS is going nuts. I have to bonsai many colonies to keep the peace between them. I'm really enjoying watching the tank fill out, and now really only buy very select frags or corals that catch my eye as being rare or unique to fill the dwindling and few empty spaces that remain. I have had some occasional coral deaths over the last year, but nothing too major. Mainly wild acro colonies that didn't make the transition to tank life. Nothing that caused me too much concern or required any drastic action. If I was to estimate, there are now well over 100 species of coral in my tank across all categories of soft coral, LPS, SPS, and even NPS. It's a true mixed reef. There are even 2 clams, which are growing really rapidly as well. I'm really looking forward to what year 3 of this tank's life will bring, the goal being to let things further mature, stabilize, and only fine-tune small details. If you have any questions about my tank or reefing journey, please post them down below. If you want to check out my channel, I've done specific videos on almost all the things I talked about today. Also, if you want to support the channel, please make sure to like this video and don't forget to subscribe. My name is Marcus, and you've been watching the Reef Nerd YouTube channel. Bye for now.